Barsamian to the stage.
Well, good evening, Edmonton. Hermanos y hermanas. Great to see you all here. Hushgal Deniz, Hoshamadid, Harametzek. Some of the languages some of you may speak. Bienvenidos. I'm thrilled to be here in Edmonton. It's actually my first time ever in your city. I spoke in Calgary last night as part of Freedom to Read. And this is a very exciting moment, I think, and I want to give a shout out to your local campus community radio station, CJLR, which fortuitously broadcasts alternative radio every Saturday at 11. And driving in from the airport this morning, it was a thrill for me to hear the program that was being aired. So I hope you all support this rare resource, this rare audio island of independence, if you will, right here in your community. Alternative radio from its very beginnings has had very close ties with campus community radio stations throughout Canada. In fact, several in Ontario and British Columbia were among the very first stations in North America to broadcast alternative radio, and now it's heard from Halifax to Victoria. But surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, I've never had any luck getting on the CBC. I wonder why. One can only speculate. I'd like to thank Richard Thornley for that introduction and for his fantastic work in getting me here. This is the easy part, to show up and give a talk, but to actually organize an event, to print the flyers, the posters, to contact the press and the radio stations takes a great deal of effort. So hats off to Richard and the staff here at the library. Well, yes, David, as you know, by the way, I neglected to tell you that the event is not being held here. David is actually at the Idlewild branch. So you're all in the wrong building. You are in Robocall land. And I've just dialed you up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. This is the wrong place. You thought you were coming to hear David Barsamian here. He's across the river. Quick, run. You might get to hear him. Well, there is this robo-scandal that is sweeping the country. And just last night I heard Sir Jean-Pierre Kingsley on that despicable medium, the TV, saying that this was posing a very serious problem for Canadian democracy, and that some 31,000 calls have apparently been made to various voters, which may have compromised the 41st national election, federal election you had here in Canada. I think one person in a riding in Ontario lost by only 18 votes. So it's quite conceivable that there is some chicanery going on here. Now, of course, coming from the United States of America, the beacon of democracy, of light, of knowledge, of wisdom, of sophistication, we've never experienced anything like this. No one here is old enough to remember a Watergate, let's say, or I can see there are a few people here that remember the 2000 presidential election in the United States, where there seemed to have been some odd things going on in the state of Florida. Ballots went missing, people voted who were not eligible to vote, people who were eligible were not allowed to vote. Often people of color, particularly in Florida, were targeted for this kind of political manipulation. It speaks a lot to the actual health of democracies in North America when political parties feel the need to engage not in the issues, but to delve into these dirty tricks in order to ensure the outcome of elections in their particular favor. I think too much is made, actually, of elections, because if democracy only means you turn out and vote every 3, 4, 5 years for a particular candidate who represents a particular political party with a range of opinion from about A to D, to be generous, is that really what democracy is about when people don't have the opportunity to participate in decision making? So important national and international issues become sort of sidelined, and we're supposed to go home, let me just make the Canadian example here, and worry whether the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Burke, made the right move in firing his coach and hiring this new guy. And then you may have seen this fierce debate that's going on now in the sports pages. Was this the right thing to do? And fans are indignant. How dare he fire the coach? There's only a month left in the season. What kind of message is this sending to the players, giving up on the team? And then Burke comes on and says, no, this shows real confidence in the team, and it'll give us an advantage going into the next hockey season. Did I pronounce hockey? I'm working on my Canadian. I'm not quite fluent. You noticed I was able to say riding, and I know a few other words, but I'll try and keep it to a minimum. I bring up this sports analogy because in a conversation with Richard Thornley earlier, the issue of sports came up because I think it explodes the myth, particularly of United States citizens, that they are uninformed, are unable to think critically, are unable to parse information, or unable to analyze data. I wonder if any of you here have ever listened to a sports show in the US or watched one on TV. It's absolutely astonishing. The gap between knowledge of sports and the gap between national and international politics is oceans wide. It's quite stunning when you hear callers from Montana or New Jersey, expressing their opinion about very complex issues of teams and the quality of the players and management decisions, and they have access, they seem to have great knowledge of very obscure data, such as in 1952, so-and-so hit so many home runs, knocking in so many RBIs. And it's quite impressive that there is that analytical power, but it's never demonstrated in the political, or rarely demonstrated in the political arena. And this is something that Chomsky pointed out to me, and in fact, he mentions in a wonderfully made Canadian documentary by two friends of mine, Mark Akbar and Peter Wintonic, called Manufacturing Consent. It won many awards. No one here will remember it. It came out in the early 90s, and this is too young of an audience to go back that far, but it's available on DVD. And Chomsky in there, and I had the privilege of participating in that film. My hair was of a slightly different hue then. The hairstylist that was supposed to come and do my hair got caught in that same traffic jam, and the Harper helicopter did not, pick him up. So that's why I'm doing radio, basically. It's a lot safer, folks, if you've got hair like this. And it's in that film, in that documentary, where he points out that Americans, U.S. people, have this tremendous analytical power, but it's an area that simply doesn't count. So they can have all kinds of opinions, all kinds of perspectives, but it's of little matter when it comes to actual important decisions like peace and war, the fate of the planet, which is, seems to be increasingly in peril and precarious as each the day goes by. So robocalls, welcome to democracy. This is what democracy looks like in the 21st century. There's a lot of corruption. It's not limited, to this country. It's also to the great neighbor to the south as well. And I think, particularly when there's so much money floating around, that the attraction to engage in skullduggery becomes acute. This is not to say it will necessarily happen, but when you've got so much money, floating around, the idea of landing contracts, of getting these, lucrative deals made, can lead to a very, I would say, negative outcomes. This is again part of the insane political system that we have in the world's second largest democracy, India being the first largest, as they call themselves, where money is just allowed to basically hijack everything. And since a very damaging U.S. Supreme Court decision in January of 2010 called Citizens United, it has literally opened up the floodgates of money to just soak and saturate the U.S. Political system. Well, so much for democracy. We may return to it. Its origins actually are from a state now considered the cradle of civilization, which itself is on the brink of catastrophe, that being Greece, of course.